We got some breaking news about Regeneron, the company just inking a deal with the U.S. government for its COVID antibody drug. The stock is flat in the after-hours session so far. Let's get right to CNBC senior health and science reporter Meg Terrell. Meg.
Hey, Melissa, this is a major deal, up to $2.6 billion, the U.S. government paying Regeneron for up to potentially 1.2 million doses of this COVID antibody drug. Joining us to talk about this contract is Regeneron's CEO, Dr. Len Schleifer. Len, tell us about this major contract and really what it signals about the government's hope for using your drug to help with the pandemic.
Right. Thanks, Meg. Appreciate you getting us on at short notice. We think this is very important. At the end of the day, if you're going to fight this this terrible pandemic, you're going to have to use public health measures. You're going to have to use vaccines, but you're also going to have to use therapeutics. And we think one of the most promising approaches is to supply antibodies to people who really aren't making enough antibodies on their own. What we've learned already is that if you don't have antibodies, you're going to have 1,000 times more virus in you than if you do make your own antibodies. And frankly, if you get admitted to a hospital and you haven't been making your own antibodies, you got 6 times the chance of dying than those who have. So giving people antibodies makes a lot of sense. And what we've already shown is if we give people antibodies, we can get rid of the virus much quicker. In the outpatient setting, we've been able to show that actually it looks like you're going to prevent people from getting hospitalized. We're still studying the inpatients to see whether or not we can actually prevent them from dying when they're in the hospital. But we think this is a very big deal. It's a 1.25 million doses if we can get it all made in time by the end of June. And we think it has a chance to help a lot of people.
That's a lot of doses, and we've been hearing it's been really tough for some patients to get these medicines. Are you hearing about any improvement in that situation? It does seem like the federal government is trying to step in to help. Are more people able to get these medicines now?
Yeah, it is a shame that it's been somewhat of a difficult launch, but that's true with the vaccines as well. We're operating in real time in a pandemic, not a lot of time to prepare, but things are improving. The government, for example, put out a locator where you can go online. We hope that all the states will opt into that. Only about half have opted in so far. Some states are adopting what we consider best practices. Texas, for example, has opened up, I think, about 15 or 20 infusion centers in North Texas. The Mayo Clinic has figured out a way to find places in some of their satellite facilities where you can bring people in and get the infusion. I think that there's a lot of work being done, and there's a lot of effort to try and make this easier. I get calls constantly, how can I get this? And we need to make it a little bit more user-friendly because we think this is part of the real fight here.
So, Len, are there dosages of the cocktail, the antibody cocktail, that are just sitting waiting to be transfused into sick patients as we hear the numbers climb? And what, if you had to pinpoint what it was exactly, is it that patients aren't getting the prescriptions, doctors aren't writing the prescriptions, patients aren't following through and going to the transfusion centers? I mean, what is the bottleneck for this treatment?
Yeah, I mean, there is an issue at all parts of the funnel, if you will. At the top end, not enough doctors, because it only has emergency use authorization. Many of the societies haven't said, well, we definitely have to use it. The NIH hasn't said you definitely should use it. The FDA has authorized it. The data look pretty compelling. So there is some issue with doctors really getting their arms around the data. On the bottom side of the funnel, there's a bottleneck of getting people infused. You have to bring a sick person with COVID to an infusion center. That takes some preparation, some PPE and so forth. But I think this is all now being worked out. There are doctors, best practices, doctors who've given thousands of doses already and can't get enough. And there are some places that don't even aren't even taking the cocktail. So it's really quite varied across the country. But we're trying to get this more homogeneous and more straightforward, so that if you meet the criteria under the emergency use authorization, your doctor can get you to a place where it can give you this infusion. Because the sooner you get it, the better it is when you're giving these antibodies. Remember, antibodies matter. If you're not making your own antibodies, you have a really much higher chance of having a bad outcome.
All right, Len, unfortunately, we're bumping up against the end of the show. I had so many more questions for you, but one thing I will notice, you and I have the same taste in books. I don't know if you could see this, but I got this molecular biology of the cell right here, too, which you have behind you on the bookshelf. So some light reading. Len, thanks for joining us.
Thanks.
All right, Mel, sending it back to you.
Nerding out, Meg. Thank you, Meg Terrell, for bringing us that interview about Regeneron. Guy Dami, let's get a quick trade off of this. The stock we see moving higher in the after-hour session.
Regeneron has 20% earnings growth. Right now, given the price it's trading at 15 times next year's numbers, well off the highs we saw about 6 or 7 months ago. I think despite this move, it goes higher just on valuation alone, Melissa.
Yeah. Tim, where would you go in biotech? Do you think Regeneron is where to be for if you were to have a COVID play?
Well, you know, we've often questioned the profitability, and you can just do some back of the envelope in terms of this order from the government. So, you know, I think this news alone will continue to keep a bid under the stock that, as Guy pointed out, it pulled back a lot. But we say all the time, I think the IBB is a great place for investors that want broader exposure to companies that are perennially in this mix.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.